We're back, Major League Journeymen. My name's Dan Gargan. This is Dax McCarty and Alan Gordon, and we are discussing U.S. soccer and the major news that just came out this past weekend. So let's jump right in. Some of the weirdest news delivery that I've seen in a long time in such a major decision, in the way that all of this came about with U.S. soccer and Greg Berhalter and reappointing and bringing him back in and all of those things. I mean, our text messages obviously were going, which started with a tweet from Ron Waxman saying Jesse Marsch will not be the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. Which is,
are you guys are you gonna give me my flowers? I want Gordo. I want Gordo to sit in. I want Gordo to sit there in that microphone and say, Dax, you were right. I want you to do it.
I'll say one thing right now on record. I'll say that you get no credit for the debauchery that's going on with U.S. soccer. He was obviously in the running, and nobody's right. Nobody's right.
I'm right. You guys said it's basically a done deal. I said I don't think there's any chance that Jesse's going to take the job.
Yeah, but you were saying he's not going to take the job. I think he wanted the job, and they went.
I still think it was a done deal. I still think that Jesse Marsch was the head coach. Jesse Marsch was the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. All
right, wait. Hold on. Can your tinfoil hat fit through that headphone right there, or what? Wow. Let's hear this. This is going to be good. I can't wait for this. Go ahead, Gargs.
Listen. No, I have no insider information. Outside of believing that Marsch was already the coach. And for whatever reason, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm sure that more will come out at some point here about how it ultimately transpired or didn't transpire or fell apart, whatever that is. But there was more than enough smoke and also more than enough, confirmation without confirmations that Jesse was the coach.
Pause. Oh, you think something's going to get leaked?
No, Gargs. I just want to know why you think it was a done deal. Like, what out in the atmosphere, whether it's Twitter, whether it's whatever it is, things you heard, rumbling, why did you think it was already a done deal? Is there anything that you can point to? Or do you just think he was available, the national team manager spot was open, he was in Chicago? Like, what was it?
I think it was all of those things that you mentioned. I also think that it was his prior relationship to Matt Crocker. I also think that the tweet from Ron Waxman to say specifically Jesse will not be the coach is also befuddling and off the wall if there's really nothing there. I just think that it's
just a feeling you have.
It's a feeling, yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I don't have
we're a big vibes podcast, so yeah. I get it. If it's a vibe you have, then it's a vibe you have.
But you know what? Jesse's not the coach. So let's talk about who the coach is, Greg Berhalter. Before we get to that, and I guess in this vein, how do you feel about the process of U.S. soccer ultimately getting to Greg Berhalter? And I know that you have strong opinions on this, Dax, so I would like to hear from Gordo.
Yeah, go to Gordo first.
Gordo, give me, first of all, before you give me your rationale, rate the process from U.S. soccer 1 out of 10.
0.
That's a good rating. That's off the board.
0.
I gave you 10 choices and you picked a different one.
Listen, man, Dax can go into, all the what do you even want to call them? Like all the metrics that they have used to select a coach. I'll let him go into that. I'm just saying from a results standpoint for everything that transpired, if that's your guy, why did we just go through what we went through? Mm-hmm. I mean, it looks horrible for U.S. soccer. It's a bad look. When all my buddies who know nothing about soccer, they come to me, they know other sports, but they're coming to me and just saying, this is ridiculous. What are you guys doing? Because it's horrible. You have the guy, you leave the guy, and then you go back to the guy. Like that. Like what is Matt Crocker doing? And somebody needed to be in his ear saying, you can't rehire him. You can rehire him in after the next World Cup. You can go back to him. That's happened before, but you can't do it right now. You have to select somebody else. And if Marsch and Patrick Vieira aren't your guys, keep looking. because go find somebody else. Because I just think to go back to him after all the drama, and now he's got to mend some relationships. Gio, we just watched Gio Reyna in the Nations Cup. He was allowed to play, and he did a pretty good job. And so now what is that relationship? And now what does that relationship look like moving forward? That's going to be tarnished. It's not going to be easy. Is he going to play him because he's worried about, what happened prior? I don't know if Greg will do that. Is it still going to be tarnished? I don't know. But to go back to Greg, and it's not even for me, it's not even if he's the right guy or not. But I just don't understand the process. I understand that he was out of contract, and they can take that narrative and say, well, he was out of contract and we were going through negotiations, but they were actively looking for a new coach. Mm-hmm. And so, Dax, tell me about how they made this decision and what were their matrix, because none of it's going to make sense.
Here comes the foil hatters. Let's see it.
It's going to be like one of my math problems I can't solve. Like this is what they just did. We're going to have to get Statman Jack out here to break it down.
Dax, let me hear it.
Let me stretch.
Yeah, get ready for this one, because I think you're about to ramble on, and I can't wait to hear this.
There's so much to unpack here, and I don't even know where to start. But where I'll start is process. And I can't for the life of me understand. And I read, the news, it breaks right as the semifinals kicking off, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Just like my head is spinning. Like, should I watch the game? Should I look at Twitter to see all the crazy reactions? Like, I don't know where to turn right now. Like, my kids are running around naked. Like, what's happening right now in the McCarty household? Like I was like, my head was spinning, and I'm like, what is going on right now? I'm not going to lie. The Greg Berhalter ship for me had sailed. It was out to sea. Gone. It was gone. Like, it was rest in peace. It was, hey, Greg, honestly, I thought he did a great job. Like, thank you for your service. Like, mentally, I am going to see a new coach lead this young, exciting team in a new direction, rightly or wrongly, but that was it. And then to come out and say that, he's coming back, I mean, it caught me so off guard. And I've read a few articles about the process that they went through. Matt Crocker has come out and said, we as U.S. Soccer, we put together, first of all, they had to do the investigation. Okay. So Greg's contract expires, and you have to investigate the allegations against him, right? And his wife, and all that stuff that came out was crazy unnecessary and really sad. And it was honestly, I think, a really big blemish on U.S. soccer's history. And it's really sad that that's what a lot of people are going to talk about at the end of Greg Berhalter's tenure, his first tenure, because it's really sad. It shouldn't have ever come to that. But when you put all that to the side and you finish the investigation and you're Matt Crocker and you say, all right, we are going to go through this extensive search process. And I read things they're talking about psychological evaluations, mental aptitude testing, like problem solving on the spot, like long-term issues, tactical issues, all kinds of stuff. For me, it's like, okay, that's fine. Then I read something that Matt Crocker says in his press conference where he goes, part of this metric system that we came up with to help us identify the coach that we wanted to lead this team, Greg Berhalter actually set that up during the 2022 World Cup cycle. Literally, he said that in his press conference. He said, Greg Berhalter, help us set this process-based model up. And when we tested him on all of these different things, when he did his interview, he tested off the charts.
He passed his own test? He passed his own test.
No shit, he's tested off the charts because he helped you come up with it, apparently. Like, I'm sitting there thinking, I can't believe Matt Crocker is actually saying this in a press conference. So I'm like, hold on a minute. If it was true that they were realistically looking at all these other candidates and going through all of this other process, the fact that they then also came back to Greg Berhalter is just so strange to me. Because you already knew what you had. You like, why do you have to re-interview him? I know you're new to this and you're a new voice and you're a new set of eyes. To me, it's just such a strange process. And this has nothing to do with Greg as a coach. I'm just talking merely about the process. Okay?
Process.
It is so crazy to me that you're going to come out and like publicly say all of these different things when if you were just going to go back and hire Greg, like to me, it would have been better if they would have said after 2 months, Matt Crocker comes in, right? He does a couple interviews and he says, you know what? I'm going to interview Greg Berhalter and we're happy. Like as an organization, as a US soccer organization, we are happy with the process that Greg went through to build up this young team. We're happy with the trophies that he won because he won 3 or 4 trophies with this young team. And forget about whatever, the competition, because I think we can all agree this is the worst Mexico team we've ever seen. Forget about that. They stepped on the field. He did what he had to do. He qualified for the World Cup, got out of the group. If these are your metrics that you're going by, fine. Hire the guy. Then he deserves to be hired again. Now, if you're going to go and you want to say, okay, we want to raise the ceiling of this team and we're going to go look at all these other coaches from all these top leagues. And Oguchi Onyewu, he did an interview with the Paramount Plus crew before the game where he was like, we had top candidates and top coaches from around the world, not just club teams, but international teams as well. It's like, well, okay, surely there is a reason why you go out and interview all of these different people and then only to come back to Greg and then talk about Greg as the one that helped you come up with the process that you put all these different candidates through, but he tested off the charts. It's just crazy, man. Like, it is insane to me. So I need to take a deep breath because I do want to talk because I do think if you look at it, I was ready for a new manager. I think this team, if you look at what the players said and you look at what the players talked about, the players have come out in resounding defense of Greg Berhalter. And I don't blame them. He is the one that has brought them together after a tumultuous qualifying process where we ended up failing to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. And Greg rebuilt that with young players, gave them an opportunity. So it is not a surprise to me that these players have come out and defended him and said, we want him back, right?
Sure.
Now, they've said that, I think, with one eye towards the future, like, hey, if Greg gets hired again, I want it on record that I was supportive of this guy. You know what I mean? Like, no player in their right mind, when Greg is still a candidate, is going to come out and say, nope, he's not a good coach. I don't want him back. Like, no player is going to say that. So they've been overwhelmingly positive in defending him. I'd like to know, right, actually what was said behind closed doors, not publicly, because I do think the players really
behind
support
closed doors,
him.
it was, hey, Jesse, we'd like for you to be our head coach.
Yeah, sure.
That's what happened behind closed doors.
I'm just at a place where I think Greg is a good coach. I think Greg did a very good job with this team. Do I think he did a great job? No, I don't think he did a great job. I think he did a pretty good job. He qualified for the World Cup. He won the trophies that was in front of him. But how did the men's national team play in qualifying on the road? They were not good. And it's hard, man. Gordo, you've played in World Cup qualifiers on the road. Yeah, it's hard, man.
Man, has the U.S. team really ever played well in qualifying on the road? Like, that's a tough metric.
I get that. It is a tough metric. But again, I look at all of these different things. You can question some of his in-game tactics. You can question some of his personnel decisions. Not bringing Pepe to the World Cup is still, I think, a massive question that people had going into the World Cup and after the World Cup too. I think you can look back on that and say that was a mistake. You know what I mean? But coach is perfect.
I mean, yes, you're never going to be able to come out of a World Cup and be like, hey, I made every right decision.
Right.
That's impossible.
No coach is perfect. And I think Greg did an overwhelmingly good job for the most part. But the whole process about how they got back to him being the coach of this team, it's just weird, man. It leaves a bad taste. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And I'm ready to move forward with Greg because I do think Greg is still going to be able to bring this team to an even bigger level. I hope. That's my hope. But it's just weird, man. It's just weird. And I don't understand how it all went down.
I think, for me, the whole... To ultimately go through all of what they went through, right? Go and hire Sportsology and tell us who we need to hire, and then hire those guys and then have them come back and tell us who we need to hire again or tell us what you guys think. It screams nobody wanted to really make a decision to me. As in, I don't want to put my name on this decision. I want to have copious amounts of process, metrics-oriented decision backing material to be able to say, well, this is why we did what we did. And I'm sure everything that they looked at is sound and obviously created by Greg. So it's got its, its I's dotted and its T's crossed. But at the end of it, it just felt like, man, we know who Gucci Onyewu is. He's been interviewed a couple times by U.S. Soccer already. So why did he need to go through that process again to bring him in and anoint him as the technical director? And we clearly know who Greg Berhalter is. Why did you need to run it all the way out? And then ultimately, I thought the weirdest part of it was the timing of all of it. So you've extended it out to this point. You've named BJ Callahan your interim to the interim. You've already said that whoever the next coach is will not coach in this competition or the Gold Cup. So what's the rush? What is the rush on making that decision? It just, that part of it was really kind of head scratching for me. And then to take it one step further, the news comes out that Berhalter's interviewing for the Club America job and might get that job. And it's like, okay, now we're going to either make it official or confirm that he's our guy just because he's ready to take on another girlfriend. Like it was just kind of odd. It was, all of it was like, man, this is all process driven. And now all of a sudden it's rushed and here it is. This is our reasoning. And it was just like throw up. It was just vomit.
And here's another thing. Like Matt Crocker has come out and said, okay, yeah, Greg Berhalter is not going to coach the Gold Cup because we need time to really figure out how to support him and how to help him and how to
What does that
build.
mean?
What is it? Like, what are
That's
we, like, what are we
stupid.
talking about? You want to know how to help him?
Dude,
Let him coach.
That's consultant speak. That is
Let him-
consultant
That's
speak, as
stupid.
in like, give me
Let him coach
more
the Gold
money
Cup.
so that I can give you some nonsense
Like,
of fluff. And it's all, dude, it's just fluff.
It's just weird, man. I just don't understand it. Like, let this guy coach the Gold Cup. Like, let him like start where he left off, right? Without the Gio Reyna drama. Like, pick up from the World Cup where he was, like, I'm pretty sure, other than the Netherlands game, which, like, let's be honest, like, we got outplayed and we probably got outcoached. And that's fair. Like, it can happen at the highest level in a World Cup.
It happens to everybody. Everybody
against a
gets
really
outplayed
good
and
team.
gets outcoached.
And
Right.
I don't think Greg should be judged just off that game alone, right? Like, he was we were the better team against England.
It's not about Greg. It's not about Greg.
I know.
We can dissect his stint, and he did some good things, he did some bad things, right? But like you said, Dax, you said it early. Everybody, not just you, everybody had put Greg on a ship sailing out to the sunset. Whatever you thought about him, he was on a ship.
Yeah.
I mean, it ended really sad. I think we all felt for Greg the way it ended. It was awful. We've talked about that. We don't need to get into that. It was a terrible breakup. But now to go back to him is just so mind-blowing, and Matt Crocker missed it, period.
No, but hold on, Gordo, hold on. Because I think that what you're talking about is somewhat the most valuable thing to talk about. I think that talking about the breakup and how that's ultimately going to affect U.S. Soccer and affect Greg Berhalter and him coaching this group is probably the most significant piece of how we move forward, because these are not new players. These are players that he's cultivated over the past 4 years. These are players that clearly have personal, emotional relationships with their parents and the Berhalters and all these things that we will talk about. But I do think that, everyone here has had a breakup or had a bad breakup. He's essentially, Greg now has been given an opportunity to lose his job for the most part, right? He lost his job and maybe not in, his contract was up. So they, explored other options, whatever. They were taking a break from one another and they were testing the field out and ultimately decided to get back together, right? But what happens here is, who is Greg now in iteration number 2? Does he learn from this? He seems like a pretty introspective guy. He seems like an intelligent guy. He seems like a guy that believes in reflection and very critical of all of those details. Is U.S. Soccer and are these players the same individuals as Greg? And are they a group that can be led? So that's why I think that the breakup is very significant. It's very valuable. That will shape how we move forward.
Sure. And I'll tell you one thing right now. When I was watching this Nations Cup or whatever it's called,
Nations League, just gonna
Nations League, dude, I'm going to tell you right now, I was watching Gio play and I felt dirty. And I felt, that breakup, and I wasn't even a part of it. And it's not necessarily Gio's fault. And I'm not on here trying to crush him. He's a kid. But what his parents did to Greg, I felt dirty about it. I felt a lot of emotions, to your point, and I think that our whole nation is going to have a lot of emotions with this rehire of Greg Berhalter. And I'm telling you what, this is not going to be a smooth road for Greg the next 4 years. It's just not. The way that this happened, it puts U.S. soccer in a real bad and a real negative headspace for all the fans around the country. I just think that you're starting off on a really, really rocky road with the rehire of Greg Berhalter, regardless of what you think, with everything that happened, Gargs. And it's not going to be easy. He is going to be,
and
it's going to be
a
agree
rough.
With you, Gordo. You're right. But here's the thing. Here's the other piece of this, though. We have generational talent in this roster. And this is talent that we've never seen, that we haven't had access to. And Gio Reyna was a 19-year-old shithead when he made the decision to act like a 19-year-old superstar, because that's what he is. He was a 19-year-old superstar that was upset about not playing in a World Cup. The adults in the situation handled themselves very poorly. And that's probably the understatement of the day, right? But I don't think that, personally, I'm a believer that I think Greg can mend that fence and manage that relationship.
I do too.
Because I think it has nothing to do with Claudio Reyna and his wife. And at this point, yes, they are Gio's parents. But Gio knows that he wants to play in a World Cup, right? He certainly wants to play in a World Cup and be a starter. He certainly wants to continue to move up the ranks in Europe. And it is in everyone's best interest to mend that fence.
Let me expound on that a little bit, because Dan's right. This relationship between Greg and Gio, it will be repaired 100%. I have no doubt about that, because like you said, Gargs, if Greg is one thing, he is very introspective. I think he looks inward. I think he's going to look at that whole situation and he's going to think, okay, what could I have done differently here? And like, there's a lot of reports out there and there's a lot of stuff that has been said about how it all went down. And the way I look at it is, hey, Greg and Gio, how can you both learn from the situation? Okay, first of all, Greg, if it's true that you really went and told Gio before the World Cup that his playing time was going to be limited and that he wasn't going to play a big role, like, that's not a good idea. Like, you don't have to, you don't have to do that to a kid who you're not really sure of what kind of role he is going to play. And to all the people that were blaming Greg for not playing Gio a lot in the World Cup, even before he started acting like a little shithead, as you said, Dan, let's not forget, Gio Reyna was coming off of a season where he was injured for about a year straight. Mm-hmm. He kept coming back. He kept getting re-injured. He had no rhythm. He wasn't playing for Borussia Dortmund. Like, let's not just completely downplay that part of it, because that probably went into Greg's thinking. Gio, of course, this kid is super talented. I mean, watching the Nations League, he was one of the best players on the field the entire tournament. And he was the reason why it was so fun to watch the U.S. these past couple of games. He was fantastic. And, oh, by the way, there's no doubting his talent. You don't get to Dortmund, you don't play heavy minutes not heavy minutes, but you don't play for Borussia Dortmund and score goals in the Bundesliga if you're not a mega talent, especially at his age. But he acted like a prick. And when you do that, we've all been there, man. Like, I don't know, when I was young and I didn't have half the talent of Gio Reyna, but when I was young and when I wasn't playing at FC Dallas, I could be a petulant little child and I could sulk and I could pout and I could be a bad teammate.
I can't see that out of you, Dax.
I know you're being sarcastic right now, and I love you for it. But it's true. It hurts. And for Gio, he had to go through that in order to learn and to grow. And I think he will learn, and I think he will grow. And guess what? Just because they hired Greg Berhalter back, if Greg calls Gio and says, hey, I'm calling you up for our games in September, he's not going to be like, I don't want to go because you're the coach. He's going to accept it. He's going to accept it in a heartbeat, okay? Yep. And so Greg Berhalter, it's on him to go call Gio into a meeting and say, Gio, I messed up. I made a mistake in telling you weren't going to play a lot. And I also made a mistake in talking about our situation at a symposium. It was supposed to be off the record, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know that, whatever. I'll never let that happen again. I want to rebuild this relationship. I want you to know you can trust me. And if you are healthy and you are playing at a good level at Borussia Dortmund, you are going to be a massive part of this national team, because Gio Reyna is a massive part of this national team. His talent does not come around often, okay? No. And I think now, to Gordo's point, what he was saying about the U.S. is starting off on a bad foot with Greg as the coach. I think we can all just, whatever, after these next couple of weeks, let's move on. Let's know that Greg is leading us forward. He is going to be under more pressure than he has ever been under as a head coach. Because guess what? Now you don't have the excuse of youth, okay? You have arguably one of the most talented rosters ever assembled by a U.S. men's national team. You have numerous players playing at big clubs and high levels. And by the way, you just got a super legitimate number 9 in Fuller and Balogun, who is going to be fantastic if you set this team up the right way to win games. So more pressure than ever on Greg. I think that if Greg doesn't have a good Copa America, U.S. soccer is a very tough decision to make. They probably need to move on. If he has a great Copa America, awesome. We're moving into the World Cup. We're flying. That's all well and good. My last thing on this whole saga.
Hold on. Before you go, hold on, Dax. You think that Greg doesn't have the keys to drive this car through the World Cup?
I think if he has a poor Copa America, I think that they should let him go.
That would be bad decision number 2, right behind bad decision number 1. Dude, you can't fire him halfway into a World Cup cycle. Or you've made your decision. You got to ride with him.
I completely disagree. Mexico fires their manager every 6 months.
Yeah, and look where they're at. You just said that's the worst Mexico team you've ever seen in your life because they do that.
That's a talent issue. That's not a coaching issue.
It is, dude.
It might be both, but listen, at the end of the day, I just said there's more pressure on Greg Berhalter than there's ever been.
Yes, I heard that. You
also
said
that you think that if he has a string of really poor results or a string of like bad tournaments, and by the way, the U.S. doesn't have many high pressure games coming up. So you think that on U.S. soil, if the Copa America is coming to the U.S., which I think it is, you think on U.S. soil, Greg Berhalter has a really poor Copa America. You don't think U.S. soccer should think long and hard about the decision that they have to make?
I don't think this roster personally is going to have a bad stretch of games from here until the time they get to the World Cup.
We're talking about hypotheticals, but what if they do, Dan? What if they do?
If they do, I think everybody's job is up for evaluation. So I would tend to agree.
So you're
with
agreeing with
me in the regard of they will consider that. In no universe do I think that they will fire Greg Berhalter.
What do you think they would do? Give him a new cognitive test and see if he passes it?
There's got to be option C here for.
Hey Greg, you've had a bad run of games here. We're gonna need you to take this test and turn it into us by midnight.
All I'm saying is.
Great! I actually have the answers to this test. Here they are.
Yeah. All I'm saying is.
I passed again.
All I'm saying is. We all agree that we could disagree. I don't know. I think Greg did a pretty good job in the 2022 World Cup cycle.
I do.
He did a pretty good job. And if it wasn't for the Gio Reyna situation, I think they would have rehired him. They would have re-upped his contract right away. No questions asked. Yeah. And you know what? No, I don't think there would be a subset of fans who are pissed off about it because they want to see this team coached by someone else. That's fair. Totally fine. Guess what? I just said, you don't have the excuse of youth, of not having players playing at a high level. You have the best striker that it looks like to me since Dempsey, since
that's some pretty good strikers in a U.S. soccer jersey.
100%. But
your point is valid.
My point is valid. You have Gio Reyna, who is coming into his own as an attacking creative midfielder that we haven't had for a long time. My biggest gripe with the U.S. at the World Cup was that we had no creativity from midfield. Yunus Musa, I think, is going to be one of the best midfielders in CONCACAF for years to come. I think he's going to get a big money move somewhere. He's going to go play for a big club because I think he's that good. But him, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie, they're not chance creators. They are not guys that are going to get our wingers and our strikers in position to score goals. Gio Reyna will do that. I'm telling you guys right now, there will never be more pressure on Greg Berhalter to continue to not only get good results, but to make sure that he is pushing all the right buttons to get these kids to play as well as I think we all believe they can be.
I think. Go ahead, Gordo.
I mean, you know, I brought up some points, but I do agree with you, Dax, and you. I know Greg really well. I know he will mend it. It's in everybody's best interest. Gio, you've said everything that needs to be said about Gio. We need him on this squad to be successful, and he'll do it. And this is not the first player coach to have some sort of drama that's sorted out. And winning fixes everything, right? So as soon as he calls up Gio. He's coming in. They start winning, and he gets minutes. Everybody's happy, and this will go away. But there's going to be this pressure. That's why I'm so kind of upset the way that they made this. They rehired Greg. Like if he was the guy, he should have been the guy. You should have known. There didn't need to be this all this drama about this job. And Gargs, you said it best. It's just like the way they released it, the timing, and it just seemed panicked. And they don't seem like, if you're talking about all these processes,
for all this shit about process, it just at the end of the day, it feels like it delivered a failed result from the process. And I actually like it. I like Greg being the coach. I do too. I think that's what I'm saying. Potentially losing the job and now having to be reflective of what he could have just lost, but also getting it back, I think is going to be extremely valuable for this next cycle. And to your point, Dax, I think he's also dealing with a completely different set of players. And this player pool is the exact same player pool, but they are all so much more experienced. And you can tell that in these games. They absolutely embarrassed Mexico. And then they went out and they put in a clinical performance against Canada in the final. And they were a cut above. And it was abundantly clear. And it's going to be fun watching this group play. I mean, they should, I think, go into the World Cup in the U.S. as a favorite, and I don't think that's a stretch. And I think that Greg is the right one, but I think it comes back to like this whole thing with U.S. soccer has always been a question mark. It's always been like, are we really? Do we have a process? Is there really a thought? Is there really a vision? Is there a 3 to 5 year plan? Is there anything here? And every step of the way, it just seems like it's a reaction. And it's, I don't know, man. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And it leaves a poor taste.
I wanna be on record as saying I am fully supporting Greg Berhalter and the vision that he is going to have leading us into 2026. I'm done talking about the process, because again, I think we all agree it's ridiculous and it's weird and it was unnecessary. But guess what? Greg's the coach. I'm fully supportive of him and the team moving forward. Watching these two games against Mexico and Canada.
Yeah, what did that tell you?
I've never had more belief than I do now that this national team can take us to a level that we have never seen before.
Dax believes that we will win. Dax believes that we will win.
That's it.
We're young, fast, and we're sharp on the ball.
How fast did we get from the back of the field to the front of the field? It was mind blowing.
We're fast.
It's these players. I think one thing that everyone can agree on is that Greg has galvanized this team to care about each other so much, to care about wearing the crest so much. And the level of talent that you actually see on display on the field now is insane. Mm-hmm. And I think a semifinal of a World Cup on home soil is not outside the realm of possibility. But I have to say, a challenge to the players now, because that is, for me, the expectation with their talent. Now we have numerous key players that are in tenuous club situations. I would love to see all of our best players, some of our most important players. Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Brendan Aronson, just got relegated with Leeds. What's going to happen there? I would love to see Ricardo Pepi find a club and stay at a club where he's playing at a high level and he's going to score goals, right? Like Matt Turner, can you go out on loan? Are you going to, Matt Turner's fantastic, but as long as Ramsdale's healthy, Matt Turner's not playing, okay? He's not getting regular games for Arsenal. Are you going to go get regular games somewhere? Chris Richards, Shaq meme. I apologize. I wasn't familiar with your game, bro. The dude is an absolute beast. I think for me, forget it. Balligan was fantastic, but Chris Richards, I think, is for me one of the most exciting prospects we've had at center back in a long time. Okay,
Robinson as well. Good to have him back.
Think about Richards and Robinson next to one another.
All of it. I mean, and by the way, the entire back line. Shout out to every single guy who stepped up and played on the back line for the U.S. in these two games. Serginho
Didn't
Dest,
give him a sniff.
Joe Scally, my teammate Walker Zimmerman stepped in, didn't miss a beat. Anthony Robinson, dude how
about Zimmerman's left-footed volley with his eyes closed?
Techers. He fancies himself as a striker.
Yeah, he does.
This guy Anthony Robinson is like a legitimate cyborg. This dude is he's a machine, man. The entire back line and the defensive structure that Greg and BJ Callahan has put forward is incredibly fun to watch. I think that what is going to take this team to the next level is them all getting into club situations where they are valued, where they play games week in, week out for top clubs. And when I say top clubs, I don't necessarily mean Champions League clubs. Champions League is great. I would love for all these guys to be playing in the Champions League. But if you're going to go to Champions League club and sit on the bench like Christian has the last 2 years at Chelsea, I don't want that for selfish purposes, because for the national team, we need a guy like Christian Pulisic to go to a team like maybe a little bit smaller club. Maybe you have to take a slight pay cut, Christian. I don't care, but you playing week in and week out and getting high level games in, that imagine, you see how good he was against Mexico. Imagine how much better.
That's the other side of the argument here is that clearly hasn't stunted him, because he had a chip on his shoulder and he played really well. Now I'm with you, Dax. I agree.
He needs to be playing.
He needs games for sure, but he doesn't seem like he's lost a step. He looked healthy. He looked sharp.
Hey, I got news for you. He's 24 years old. You can't lose a step at 24.
I'm talking about at sharpness, because he wasn't playing games, not because of his speed.
Listen, the Mexican defenders kind of look like traffic cones. I'm sorry, I have to say. It was brutal. It was brutal to watch Mexico, man.
Gordo,
I tell you, it was bad.
Hold on, Gordo. Which one of these players for you is the most important to find a comfortable situation in a run of games? Is it Pulisic? Is it Gio? Like where is it? Is it somebody different? Is it Chris Richards? In your mind, what's the most important for the U.S. Soccer to figure out? And maybe it's not U.S. Soccer's job to figure it out, but whoever's these guys' agents. Is there one that sticks out?
I mean, I'll give you one. But I completely agree with Dax. These guys, we have a lot of really, really good players, but they need to be sorted out in a good situation. I think they came into the last World Cup cycle, and most of them were in a pretty good situation with their club. And they were playing games and they were sharp. We need them all to find good homes to where they're playing, because I think, I was talking to Dax right before we went on air, and it's hard when we played Mexico. I was so into it, man. I love kicking Mexico's ass. I freaking love it. And I thought our boys looked so sharp, man. Like, all these guys can play. I mean, you see how comfortable they are on the turn? I
said not that long ago where I was not interested in these games anymore, and I watched that game and I was right back in.
Right back, dude. These kids were balling, dude. And I was so proud to be a US fan, man. I really was. And I wasn't thinking about the coaching situation. I wasn't thinking about U.S. soccer and the decision that was made with the coaching. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about the kids on the field. I was happy to see Miles Robinson back. I had a lot of really positive feelings about these kids, man. How fast we were, how dynamic, how brave. All the good things you want to see in your squad, especially against Mexico. But like, I'm talking to Dax, and I'm like, did we look that good because Mexico's that bad, or are we that good? It's hard. It was hard for me because I was thinking about it during the game. I'm like, we're pissing on them. I was texting you guys. I'm like, dude, we are pissing on Mexico. This is great, right? We looked great, but like Dax said, this is the worst Mexican team I've ever seen, right?
Yeah,
and they're not good.
I also thought we bottled up Canada too, and really gave them very little. Alphonso Davies is world.
Yeah, so maybe it's a little bit of both, but even if they're not a good squad, you gotta go out and have a performance like they did. So they did it.
Who's your one? Who's your one guy?
The one is, we need a number 9. So if it's this new guy, tell me his name again.
Balogun.
We need him to be in form. I think that was the biggest piece.
He's legit.
That was the biggest piece that we were missing from the World Cup. We did not have a presence at the number 9. I thought our guys worked really hard, but we didn't have a number 9. And you have to, if you're going to get through a tournament like that, you got to have a guy that can score goals for your period. Yeah. So it's got to be him if that's the guy.
I want to give a shout out to Tim Weah. This guy is fantastic for the national team. This guy's electric. He opens up so much space for so many different players. He's ridiculously unselfish. And I read and saw somewhere that like the last half of the season for his club team, for Lille, he's been playing fullback. I don't want that. I don't want him playing fullback. I want this guy going somewhere where he's going to play winger, where he can continue to improve and sharpen his game, because the vertical nature of his game and the width he provides and the chances that he creates for his teammates this guy is going to be a very, very valuable member of this team. And I want him
Like
playing
goal number
winger.
2.
I want him playing in an attacking position. I do not want him playing fullback. So go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like goal number 2 against Mexico, right?
Exactly.
Hey, and
Dax,
that's your guy.
Is he your guy that you would like to see in the best possible scenario?
No, Gio Reyna. Gio Reyna's the guy. He has to.
Do you think he needs to leave Dortmund?
No, I think Dortmund needs to give him more time. And I think
don't know.
Dortmund,
He's been pretty influential off the bench, man. He's scoring goals off the bench.
Listen,
He's a difference maker.
I don't want him to leave Dortmund because they're one of the biggest clubs in the world. And if he leaves Dortmund and goes somewhere else, I don't know if they're going to value him like Dortmund hopefully would value him moving forward. But one thing he has to do is he has to stay healthy. Because he's already injured. It was a bad tackle. I don't know how bad the injury is, but he was injured against Canada.
Said it's a bruise. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Calf
if
bruise.
he can stay healthy and if he can start 25 games next year for Borussia Dortmund and stay healthy and continue to build confidence, he is easily the most important piece to this U.S. men's national team moving forward, because I think we've seen defensively, this team is elite, like very good. Okay. Forget about the games against the Netherlands. This team is very. Don't do that. Don't give me the face. No.
I don't know,
do that.
dude.
Defensively
I'm with
elite,
guards.
I don't
They
know
are.
about that.
They are elite. Again, name a game other than the game against the Netherlands where they conceded more than 2 goals or looked a little bit out of sorts defensively. You can't do it. There wasn't a game in the World Cup where they looked out of sorts.
I would give more credit to our midfield and the work that Tyler Adams and McKinney and these guys were doing.
Our central midfield is the biggest reason why
I know
our
you guys.
defense doesn't work.
I know you dinosaurs have been retired for a long time, but when I talk about defensively, I'm talking about like our structure, our shape. The midfield is The midfield is included in that clearly.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm not talking about.
the defense.
I'm talking about our defensive solidity as a group is fantastic. Okay. You can tell me a game you remember where this team conceded 3, 4, 5 goals. I'm more than willing to listen and eat crow. But other than the Netherlands game.
No, dude, you just made a ridiculous statement saying that our defense is elite. It's not elite. That's a ridiculous
What do you
statement.
mean by elite?
It is. I mean that it is very, very difficult to score on this team. And it has been
good.
for a
We're
number
not saying
of years.
we're bad. We're not saying we're bad.
It has been very difficult to score on this team for a long time.
I give you a little shrug.
Whatever. My
I
point
just think it's
stands.
too much.
Okay. Well, on the next pod, after you do some research, I'll expect another apology. Like you should have apologized for your Jesse Marsh crazy take. Anyways, Gio is the key to unlocking all these great players we have going forward. So I hope that he has a good preseason. I hope he stays healthy, and I hope we see him and Greg kiss and make up.
All right, boys and girls, we're going to wrap it up there. I think we've dissected this one enough, and I'm sure that we'll have more to talk about in U.S. soccer land as the weeks and months unfold. So appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you soon.